Welcome to the Irishman, Englishman and Scotsman Football Podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Irishman, Englishman and Scotsman Football Podcast. Joining me as always, all the way from Scotland, Fino. How you doing, buddy?
Aye, not bad. Yourselves?
Pretty good, Kev.
I am blooming today. Thanks, JP.
Blooming Joe. You blooming, Joe?
Always, JP, always.
Always blooming throughout this lockdown while Fino enjoys the spoils of pubs and football. On the show this week, we're going to have a look back, of course, at the Premier League games from last weekend and a preview of the games coming up. We'll have a little chat about the enigma that is Paul Pogba. And, of course, fans are back in the stadium and it's made a bit of a difference. So, cracking on, Friday night is the first game. Fino, Leeds against West Ham. You know, West Ham in a run of form. That Man United game, obviously, you know, it's got to be a sickener. But, I mean, you'll fancy your chances here. I mean, you just never know what's going to happen with Leeds, right, Fino?
Yeah, that's the thing. You know, it's difficult to say given kind of Leeds' Jekyll and Hyde style form. And I think West Ham have been kind of grinding those results out. But, you know, nothing like how they were playing when they were beating Wolves 4-0 and drawing with Man City. The big thing is that it's actually the start of a very tricky run of games for West Ham. Like right up until New Year's, I think we play Chelsea, Everton and Southampton. So they'll really want to get those 3 points in the bag, kind of solidify a bit of, you know, form going into those tough games. Last week's game against Man United, I don't know if you guys saw it, it was one of the oddest VAR checks that I've ever seen for Man United's first goal, where they kind of checked to see if the ball had gone out of play at the halfway line, which I've never seen before in a football game, so that's something. But, you know, I think if you look at the table alone, you know, you'd expect West Ham to win this, but being said, there's only 3 points between West Ham and Leeds. You know, Leeds, I think, have 2 wins from their last 6, but they've also played kind of Villa, Chelsea, Arsenal. You kind of wonder if their league position kind of masquerades actually how good a team they are.
Yeah, Leeds are very, very hard to predict, like the Premier League this season. I actually thought they were half decent against Chelsea, held their own for a while. They'll be looking to get something from this game. I mean, we spoke earlier on about how Leeds they're absolutely fearless in this Premier League. I mean, when teams come up from the Championship, a lot of them set up to stay up, you know, sit behind basically park the bus and try and stay up, and then the next season get the Premier League money and then try and build on that. Leeds have come up and they said, right, we're going to have a go. You know, Bielsa ball, and fair play to them. They're great to watch, and it's very hard to predict what's going to happen. Sorry, Fino, I reckon Leeds are going to do this one.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we called it last week, didn't we, that, you know, Patrick Bamford was always going to score against Chelsea, and I just fancy him to go on a bit of a run. He seems to go on a bit of a run when he scores, so I think he will score in this game. I wonder if West Ham will look at how Chelsea managed to kind of successfully navigate the Leeds press. They seem to do it fairly comfortably, and I just wonder if West Ham will kind of study how Chelsea set up and played against them. I'm going to go for a draw in this one. Will
the pride of Yorkshire pull through, Kev?
I think they've got a good chance, actually, yeah. I know West Ham, you know, Fino sounded fairly confident there, but I go back to what I said, that Leeds always find a way to make it difficult for you. I thought they made Chelsea look a bit ordinary at times, actually. They were pretty unlucky, really. Maybe they paid a bit of a price for being a bit naive, is usually the word they say, isn't it? You know, just, I don't know, there may have been a penalty chance that they could have had. If the guy had gone down, the Poveda Campo, I think he's called, did pretty well, and I could see them winning this.
I think it's interesting. You mentioned that I was feeling a little confident. Usually, I'm the least confident West Ham fan in the world. So, you know, having seen a bit of a dodgy West Ham performance last weekend, maybe my confidence will help spur us on to victory.
So you're going for a West Ham win?
Yeah, why not?
The ever-confident Fino. That game was on 9 o'clock Central European time, Friday night. Saturday, the early kickoff at 1:30 here in Europe is Wolves against Aston Villa. Now, Wolves battered by Liverpool, Kevin. I didn't really fancy them anyway because obviously they sold their most creative player, Jota, and the centre-forward fractured his skull. You know, I thought they looked Traore was a presence, definitely, but I watched most of the first half and I thought Liverpool kind of strolled it, to be honest. I mean, I think the Keller had one decent save. There was a lob, maybe, but Wolves didn't look at the races at all, Kev.
They're a bit disappointing, weren't they? From the point of view of anyone apart from a Liverpool fan, they just didn't seem to really go into the game with much gusto, really. And I don't know if that's because Liverpool just didn't let them. Do you remember we talked about the Leicester game a couple of weeks ago, and Leicester came, with high hopes, and Liverpool just kind of overwhelmed them, really. Didn't really give them much of a chance. And I thought it was a similar kind of performance against Leicester. They did have, like you said, they had a couple of chances. Of course, there was the penalty that they may have got if, until VAR this time, actually saw some sense. Cody mistake for the goal, and then after that, they just didn't do as much as you'd hoped, because I think everyone this year we were so excited about Wolves. I think if we go back and listen to one of those very, very early podcasts this season, I think you'd find us all saying they could be pushing top four this year, and it's just been their ambition doesn't seem to have been there in a way. And I think this is a really interesting game, actually, because you look at the table and you think Villa's position is not much to write home about, but they've got 2 games in hand now. They've had a bit of a rest because of the game last week being called off, and if they were to win those 2 games in hand, okay, big if, but they'd be right back up near the top of the table. And I think this is going to be tricky for Wolves again. I don't really hold out that much hope for them, to be honest. I think Villa are favourites here.
I think you've hit the nail exactly on the head there, Kev. I was just about to say the same thing. There's a huge run of fixtures coming up in the next month, basically, over Christmas, over New Year. Game every 2 days. It's going to be bonkers. This little break that Newcastle and Aston Villa have had, I think is secretly really going to benefit them, and they can play that extra game, maybe March or April sometime next year. So I fancy Villa to win. I think Wolves are blunt. I thought, selling Jota and not really replacing him, they lost a huge spark of creativity. And now the Mexican boy up front is out as well for a while. So they looked kind of blunt. They looked short of ideas. You can knock the ball out wide to Traore, but apart from that, they didn't have a whole lot. They're nice and neat and tidy, and they pass the ball around. But I fancy Villa to win this. Joe?
Well, I think before getting thumped by Liverpool, I think this season Wolves have kept 4 or 5 clean sheets in the league this season. So I would expect they're going to go back to basics for this game. They're going to be really well drilled defensively, and I think they might keep a clean sheet. So I'm going to go for a Wolves win.
Ooh, Fino?
I'm going to go for a draw, I think. We talked about Aston Villa maybe being, a bit having their batteries recharged a bit by not playing since the end of November, but they could also be a bit rusty. So, I think both teams are so up and down at the moment. I think literally Wolves' last 6 games go like win, loss, draw, something along those lines. And so, I think Aston Villa definitely have enough to hurt Wolves and get at Wolves. It's just whether or not they, without Jimenez, can create a focal point for their attack. So, I would say a score draw.
Right. 4:00 kickoff on Saturday, Newcastle West Brom. I have to say it should be a Newcastle nailed-on win because of the fact that West Brom were battered by Palace, had a man sent off, conceded 5 goals. Newcastle had the rest, but then we don't know how many players are going to be actually fit, how many are COVID-free, will we have a squad? I think, if we've got the bare bones back, I think we might have enough to hopefully beat West Brom. So at the minute, I'm saying it's a Newcastle win, 2-0.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. I mean, for West Brom, how bad is that result? It's bad when Christian Benteke scores twice. Apparently, he hasn't scored twice in a game since 2017 or something. And I can't remember, the last time that Palace scored 5 in a game. Who knows whenever that was. So that's a real bad result for them. And so surely Newcastle will win this game.
I mean, you would hope so, wouldn't you, from your point of view, mate? I mean, that was a shock. I mean, they were up against, I didn't actually watch the game myself, but Zaha was playing again, wasn't he? For Palace, and obviously they're a different, they're a totally different side. When he's in the team, so maybe they got a bit unlucky, but I'll be really depressed, mate, if Newcastle don't beat them.
Fino, a full house for Newcastle for the first time on the podcast.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, here we go. Wow.
I was looking at that West Brom team. Mateus Pereira is definitely a massive loss to them. And that red card seemed to kind of sum up West Brom's season so far. They actually were playing okay against Palace until that happened. There's that little bit of promise, and then it's just a crushing blow. They're still within touching distance of Brighton, but realistically, I don't see them climbing out of the relegation zone anytime soon.
No, it's not looking good for West Brom. Now, the game on Saturday evening at 6:30 is the game of the weekend. It's the Manchester derby, Man United, Man City. And of course, something always comes up around this time when this fixture is pulled up. And it's Paul Pogba's agent, Mino Raiola, said he's unhappy at Man United and he can't manage to express himself like he wants to. He needs to change the team. He's contracted until June 2022. Jamie Carragher has come out and said Pogba's not worth the hassle, mate. But, Mini Raiola, does he owe child support or has he got a gambling problem or something? I thought Pogba was actually finally starting to play well the last few games. I didn't watch the West Ham game. I mean, I seen the some of the highlights, but how was he, Fino?
I think undoubtedly he's one of the best players in the world on his day. I think the issue is that we kind of rarely see that in a Man United shirt. And yeah, he scored a great first goal, at the weekend against West Ham. For me, Pogba's a bit of an enigma, and it just, for whatever reason, it's clear that Old Trafford just isn't, and I don't think really ever has been where he's been most comfortable. He's a shadow of the player he was at Juventus, and he's a shadow of the player that he's consistently for the France national team. So yeah, maybe Pasteur's new does make sense for him.
I mean, I don't think there's any doubt there, right? Pasteur's new make absolute sense. He has to leave. He's not. I mean, it's clear before those comments. It's clear that he's not happy, and it's crystal clear that Man United need to get some decent money for him, right? So you talked about the contract being up. So basically, they've got a couple of windows, maybe 3 transfer windows to get some money for him, to get like decent money, or to get like a really good swap deal, with someone. So from everyone's point of view, he has to leave. But just if you're Man United, you must be pissed off. If you're Solskjaer, you must be pissed off by the timing of those comments, right? Suddenly, it's all sort of starting to come good, really. Again, they're another side with the game in hand, aren't they? So if you look at their league position, you sort of think, win that. They're looking really, really healthy. They've won all those games away from home. Got a good chance there in the Champions League. Everything's kind of going right. And then that sort of comment is just like, oh, for God's sake. So, but no doubt at all, he has to leave, and he should leave, as soon as possible.
Who's going to sign him though? Real Madrid, can they afford him? Barcelona can't afford him for sure. Bayern Munich don't really need him. Paris Saint-Germain, they're probably saving their money for Messi. So is the only realistic option for him to go back to Juventus?
No, Joe. I think this was all planned. I think Man United knew this was coming at the start of the season. That's why they signed Bruno at the back end of last season. They signed Donny van de Beek. They've got Scott McTominay. They've an embarrassment of riches in midfield. And we're coming up to January. So, obviously, transfer window time. Raiola, he knows the story. Real Madrid are doing quite well. Zidane is the French coach there. He speaks the same language. Real Madrid are doing pretty okay compared to Barcelona. There's a bit of a lead stretching in the top of the league there. They'll have the money, and I'll make a prediction now. I think he'll be gone to Real Madrid in January, and I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Hazard ends up at Man United.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that.
You heard it here first, Fino.
I think it's the first time that Scott McTominay has ever been called an embarrassment of riches. But Pogba is such a good player when he wants to be and when he's allowed the freedom to roam. And I do wonder whether or not there's an element of still that kind of Ferguson-esque no player is bigger than the club. And actually an ego like Pogba requires a bit of massaging. I would be interested to see whether or not, I don't think he would go to Dortmund, but he's definitely an excellent bargaining chip for somebody like Haaland. If Solskjaer really wants Haaland, Man United already have previous for paying huge sums of money for wages to players to play elsewhere. It wouldn't surprise me if they tried to force Pogba's hand.
Another thing we haven't spoken about is that there's a very big possibility he could also go to Paris Saint-Germain. It's got to be a mega move, and it's got to be. In fairness to Dortmund, we love them. They're kind of a family club. They're not this glamorous club, i.e., a Barcelona, a Real Madrid, a Paris Saint Germain, or maybe I don't even think he'd fit in at Bayern because I don't think his work rate would fit in there. So, I think Real Madrid or Paris Saint Germain. United obviously will look for somebody, you know, as part of a deal, possibly as Kev said earlier.
Now that we're in the predictions business, not just on who's going to win at the weekend, but where players are going, so I'm gonna go for it as well, mate. That because I reckon there's zero chance that you're right there, JP. I
For Real
reckon.
Madrid,
Yeah, zero. I can't see it myself. Although the Hazard thing was a really interesting. I've kind of forgotten about him, as I think most Real Madrid fans probably have as well. You're right. He's a bargaining chip as well. So you never know. So that just from 0%, which I thought when you started saying that, I think it's maybe maybe I'll give you 20 or something like that. I reckon it might be Juve. I reckon he might just go back to Juve. I don't think he'll go to Paris Saint-Germain just because they might be keeping their powder dry for Messi. Of course, there were some comments, weren't there, from Neymar about how he wants to play with Messi again and let's try and make it happen. And so you never know that even if Messi comes on a free, you're looking at hundreds of millions of euros that you're going to have to pay anyway. So I reckon they might not be in for a player like Pogba right now, but Juve probably would.
But as you said, what awful timing, not just ahead of the derby at the weekend, but also tonight's game against Leipzig. It's just awful timing for a player that Solskjaer would be looking to in the dressing room to really be galvanising that team and getting them up for it. And suddenly he's got 1 foot out the door. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that his friends in the changing room already know he's probably got 1.5 feet out the door. But at that public perception, it ruins things, and it definitely will bitter his relationship with the fans.
all this Pogba talk has kind of overshadowed Man City, who are in 7th place on 18 points, and they've won the last couple of games. They're coming into this one with a bit of form. Aguero looks like he's back as well. This is making for a cracker. I actually fancy City to win this because of the fact that Man United are at home. They seem to be the world's greatest team away from home these days, but at home, whether there's the extra added level of pressure or whatever it is, I don't know, but they can't really seem to do it at home. And I fancy City to sneak this one.
Yeah, I think you're right, JP. Or at least I share your opinion. Man United did really well against City last year, didn't they? Did they beat them twice? Did they beat them home and away last year when clearly Man City was still like a better team? And now you'd sort of look on the strength of what's happened this season. You wouldn't be quite so sure, right? You'd sort of say, well, they're probably a bit even. But I think you're spot on there. Man United are not and haven't played with that freedom at home as they have, and I think City will just be too clever for them now, having played themselves into form after their own dodgy start to the season.
The only thing that I would say is, will United's extra day of rest make the difference? Technically it's a harder game against Leipzig on paper compared to Marseille, but that extra 24 hours of potential analysis, potential tactical setups really could help Man United kind of solidify themselves against what is starting to be a very kind of informed Man City.
I don't think it will, Fino. I think I heard somewhere. So obviously, Man City are already through in their group as group winners. So I wouldn't be surprised if they make 11 changes. So I don't think it will matter a huge amount. Obviously, Man City, Fulham, they won 2-0, and normally you would think they may win 4-5 or 6 against Fulham. But Sterling was back in the goals. Kevin De Bruyne was amazing again in midfield. So I predict that by the time we all tuck into our Christmas turkey, Man City will be top of the league. That's my prediction.
I don't think they'll be top of the league, but I think, obviously it was a huge benefit to the likes of Man City and Liverpool qualifying for the Champions League and winning the group a game early. You know what I mean? So they can rest the players then. Liverpool's win against Ajax and allowed them to obviously rest the players. This week, Man City will probably do the same, play the kids against Marseille, and they'll be full throttle against Man United come Saturday evening. Yeah, I fancy City to win it 2-1. Right. Everton and Chelsea is the final game on Saturday night, lads, 9 o'clock. Everton, of course, got the draw against Burnley, and Chelsea beat Leeds quite comfortably in the end by 3-1. Everton, we know, we all bigged them up at the start. They've fallen off the radar completely. I thought they were lucky in patches against Burnley, to be honest. Robbie Brady put Burnley ahead. Calvert-Lewin got an opportunist goal, which I don't think should have stood. I don't know if you guys watched the game. It was the early game on Saturday, but there was a bit of a push on the build-up to Calvert-Lewin's goal to release Richarlison to knock the ball into Calvert-Lewin. And Burnley obviously protested. VAR didn't do anything, and the game carried on. So it finished 1-1. Chelsea, on the other hand, of course, impressive going forward against Leeds. Everton won't sit back, and that, I think, benefits Chelsea. When Chelsea play against a team like Tottenham who sit back, they struggle. But when they're playing against a team who wants to play football, i.e. Everton with their superstars, I think Chelsea will pick them off and beat them by a couple of goals. Fino?
Yeah, I actually think that this is probably the game that everyone should watch on Saturday as opposed to the Manchester derby. I think it could really be a cracking game. I think Joe, since you've talked about Giroud, he's been on absolute fire. He scored 4 in midweek and then he scored 1 at the weekend. For Chelsea, it's a great problem to have that they brought in Werner at the start of the season, and actually somebody that's been on their bench perennially is starting to get into the goals, and actually that's what you need when you're going for the title. Then you've also got kind of Chelsea's backline. How are they going to deal with Calvert-Lewin? I think it's a really good point, JP, though, that when Everton come out and play, Chelsea will feel a bit more comfortable, and they don't do quite as well against teams that they have to kind of methodically break down. I think Chelsea will be looking to take 3 points, obviously. Everton will be hoping to get a point, I think.
Earlier on, I was going to say he put the kiss of death on Timo Werner earlier on, calling him his most disappointing player of the season, and he started banging in the goals.
I mean, that's the thing. He hasn't really started banging in the goals. I think he got a couple against Saints, but I watched him against Leeds. He missed 4 or 5 clear-cut chances. He actually missed from 1 yard out. I honestly don't know how he missed. One of the misses of the season. But I think the reason why Frank Lampard's keeping him in is that he is a real nuisance. Like, he's not playing badly, he just can't score. He's still assisting, he's still working hard, he's still creating chances, he just can't score. But, so long as Giroud's in there hitting the back of the net, then it's all good for Chelsea.
Yeah, but not just Giroud. I mean, the weird thing about this Chelsea team, isn't it, is they've just got goals everywhere. I think I read somewhere that 18 players or something like that have scored for Chelsea this season. From A to Z, from Abraham to Zuma, they're all scoring. And I think that's the thing, they've got goals all through the team. And I think what's happening now is, there's a bit of a pattern emerging, isn't there? Is that after the craziest start to a season, the results and everything else seem to be just sort of reverting to, more like what you might have expected at the start of the season. And Everton as well, really. Great in patches, great players, going to score lots of goals, but just a bit flaky again, just a bit like not, don't look anything like, contenders for top 6 just because something's tending to go wrong. So I reckon they'll play pretty well, but Chelsea will probably do them about 3-1.
I just wanted to mention on this game as well, we shouldn't forget, so Carlo Ancelotti used to manage Chelsea, and I think is still one of the strangest sackings of all time. He won the Premier League and the FA Cup in his first season and then got sacked the following season, which is incredibly harsh. So we shouldn't underestimate how much he will want to beat Chelsea this weekend.
It feels like every other week we've got an ex-Chelsea manager coming to Chelsea to play against Chelsea or whatever it is. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how Ancelotti shapes up, whether or not they need to rein in themselves a little bit, or if they're going to go and at home try and assert their dominance over a Chelsea team that are definitely in ascendance.
And just one thing there, Joe. I think that's a really good point about sacking, but still not the strangest sacking for Ancelotti, who was once fired at half time, if memory serves. And one day when we go back and do like historical podcast, we'll tell that story. But that takes some doing to get fired at half time.
It reminds me of, I think Bielsa only lasted 48 hours at Lazio. Sunday's games, Joe, Southampton with a jammy win, I has to say, and the benefit of VAR against Brighton. Poor old Brighton were robbed. Southampton kick off against bottom of the table, Sheffield United. I think this is going to be a full house for Saints again. I'm going to go for Southampton win, and I think you'll do it convincingly. Early kick-off, 1 o'clock Central European time on Sunday. Sheffield United look hopeless. They really do. And, there's going to have to be some changes there.
Yeah, obviously, I think Jamie Vardy scored a last-minute winner, didn't he, for Leicester against Sheffield United, which must have been heartbreaking for them. And you saw at the end, Chris Wilder was just kind of despondent, head in his hands on the sidelines. As for Saints, yep, you're right. They probably didn't deserve to beat Brighton. I can't see how it was a penalty, to be honest. It didn't look inside the box, but I'll take it all day long. For Saints, fantastic that Danny Ings is back in the goals. Hopefully he'll go on a run. And Super Yannick Vestergaard, our centre-back, here's a great stat for you. So he scored his third goal of the season. Brilliant header. He now has more goals than Aguero, Aubameyang and Martial combined in the Premier League this season. So just amazing.
Stat of the week there, Joe. Southampton win, lads, yeah?
Yeah. JP, you took the word right out of my mouth. I was going to say Sheffield United look absolutely hopeless. And yeah, as you say, despondent on the sidelines. These are the kinds of games where you would expect a dodgy VAR decision to go against Sheffield United and Southampton to continue to ride their luck. Yeah, I think Southampton all day long.
Yeah, normally I'd try and go for the contrary view, but it's hard to see on this one. I think it might be about 5-0 actually.
Yeah, I think that Vardy
on.
thing, that decision, Kevin, just that, things like that can break a team really, and I think they're doomed really. 3:15, interesting game. Palace against Tottenham. Now, Palace, of course, won 5-1 against West Brom. Obviously, I've bigging up Tottenham the last month, and we all said, Kev, you said they've got this big, tough run of fixtures. They've come out smelling the roses. They're top of the league. I think Palace will go at them. They've got Saha back. Benteke scored goals for the first time in 15 years, according to Joe. But Tottenham defensively are brilliant, and I fancy Tottenham on the break with Son and Kane to do them and stay top of the league.
If you were really putting your money on, or if you really had to bet because what you believed, you'd have to say Tottenham are favourite. But I would say this isn't that wasn't the end of their run. Tottenham have got have got another couple of really difficult games coming up, and this is probably the one in the middle where you would have said, well, this is the one where they can take a bit of a breather. But I don't think absolutely they can't take a breather, right? I think it's going to be whatever happens. They're going to have to be absolutely concentrated. It's going to be physical. It's going to be tiring. I think they'll rise to the occasion, right? Don't get me wrong. I think they'll enjoy it. Actually, I think Mourinho will enjoy this challenge, but I wouldn't be all that surprised, right? If a pragmatic Mourinho, like if they might not go hell for leather. If they end up drawing this, he might not be so bothered. We'll see. I think this really is a tricky game for them.
It's interesting. I was reading on social media that in the second halves of both of Tottenham's last two games against Chelsea and against Arsenal, they have accumulated 0.00 expected goals. To be honest, I think Tottenham, we're going to start getting to the stage where people are calling them boring Tottenham. They're definitely happy to soak up all that pressure and hit people on the attack, sit in, win 1-0. For me, this is going to be a Tottenham win. One thing I wanted to chat about, though, was there seems to be a bit of buzz about Harry Kane at the moment, especially to do with the way that he backs into defenders. So if you've not seen it, there's been a couple of incidents where defender's gone up to head the ball and he's backed in, knows exactly what he's doing. It does kind of feel like the tide is turning a little bit and the England's kind of captain is starting to be a bit more of a villain, as he's gone from being kind of plucky underdog for Tottenham to now kind of leading the line for title contenders.
Hang on a minute. See, I've been kind of reading this stat all this week that is boring Tottenham. They scored 5 against Southampton, 6 against Man United, and 7 against Maccabi Haifa. How is this a boring team? They scored 2 against Arsenal. Yes, they set up a little bit defensively against Man City, which, to be fair, why wouldn't you? But to call them boring, I find really strange because they are scoring a lot of goals this season.
Yeah, when you look at the stats, and I'm not one to necessarily be heavily into like the football analyst chat, but I think I saw somewhere that Son has scored 10 goals from less than 4 expected goals. So actually, what we're seeing is they're taking chances more often than not, and so if that starts to dry up ever so slightly, and I know that this is going against what I said last week, where I tipped them for the league if they're top at Christmas, but it will be interesting to see what happens there if Son hits a bit of a bad patch in terms of scoring. If they can't get the ball to their front men, do they have the strength and depth to like we were talking about with Chelsea, have somebody come off of the bench and, nick that 90th minute winner.
They certainly do, and Gareth Bale, who didn't come off the bench against Arsenal. And if you're a Tottenham fan, they've got to be loving this at the minute. I mean, they've been playing great football for years on and off. They've had some great teams with Ginola, before that with Klinsmann, but they win nothing. But if, they're top of the league, and they actually have a realistic chance of winning the league this year. So I think Tottenham fans will be delighted, and they'll take boring Tottenham all day long.
Yes, you say that, JP, and you're right. They'll take it and they'll be enjoying it. But I know quite a lot of Tottenham fans, and I know right now they'll all be sitting there wondering, how are we going to mess this up? Because there's this kind of fatalism about Tottenham fans. You were having a go at me last week, or reminding me about me being pessimistic about Liverpool, even when we were about 140 points clear. You can bet if Tottenham were 25 points clear, all Tottenham fans would be going, "Oh God, how are we going to mess this up? How is it going to go wrong?" So I think, in a way, I'd quite like to see Tottenham ahead at Christmas. Quite like to, I do like them. I like Mourinho, always have. Quite like to see how they go, but I don't think, no matter how big their lead is, it's never going to be in the bag.
Well, according to our statistician here at the Irishman, Englishman, Scotsman Football Podcast, if Spurs are top at Christmas, they're champions-elect, in the words of Fino. And I actually think that, he might be right. I maybe a couple of games after, because if they build up a lead, and you want a manager to go somewhere and pick up dirty results, Mourinho's the man.
Yeah, I'll caveat that a little bit, that I think they need to be like a point clear. I think if I'm looking at the table at the moment, Tottenham and Liverpool are neck and neck, basically down to, I think Tottenham have scored 5 more goals. So take that Man United result out, and they are literally, really head to head. It could come down to those 2 games, Tottenham, Liverpool, Liverpool, Tottenham.
Yeah, when hopefully there's more teams involved right till the very end. Hopefully it's a 4 or 5 horse race right till the end. Fulham, is there something happening at Fulham? They won a couple of games ago. They didn't play too bad against Man City. They only lost 2-0. Most of us thought 5 or 6. Liverpool are red hot favourites to win this game, Kev. A little bit of a run now. I think you were kind of shocked last week when we spoke just before the Champions League game that Alisson was out, but the young goalkeeper came in and he's kept his place ahead of Adrian.
He's done okay, yeah. He's made a couple of eye-catching saves, which is good. What I've been more impressed by, apart from those saves, is he's just looked really calm, and that's in stark contrast to when he played a couple of games in the whatever it's called, the League Cup. And I conceded like 4 or 5 goals each time when Liverpool played one of those teams where it was just kids, So I was really pleased to see. I know that Klopp's been a fan of his for a long time, and they've thought one of the reasons he likes him is he's really good with his feet. And anyone who remembers, Adrian playing knows that he's not very comfortable. He's not very confident with the ball at his feet at all. And I think that's the modern game, isn't it? It's the modern goalkeeper. You want, especially someone like Klopp, right? You want someone who just looks like a footballer in the way that Alisson does. Alisson looks like he could play anywhere on the pitch with the ball at his feet. So he's done really well. And I don't know about this game. I think, obviously, like you say, Liverpool red hot favourites. But if they approach it with that same, kind of concentration and that same determination, ruthlessness, as they have done against Leicester and Wolves, and not with that sort of half-assed approach that they had against Brighton, where they were just sort of playing with fire. And I've said it before, so I'm not going to go over it again. But you can't afford to just go in with a 1-goal lead anymore with VAR the way it's out. You've got to go in and you've got to batter teams if you're capable of. Let's see them at least try to do that.
Mightily impressed with Liverpool against Wolves. So, again, yeah, I would think 3-4, 5-0, whatever is, however many goals they want to score, I reckon.
How many you want to score, Kev? Okay, Joe. 8:15 Central European time, Sunday night. Arsenal against Burnley. Arsenal are in a horrible run of form. Against Tottenham, when they went 2-0 down, obviously Tottenham sat back, Mourinho style, to protect the lead. Arsenal knocked the ball around. Well, it looks good, but no end product. Burnley are going to go there and just try and get something, I think. And Arsenal, no confidence. I'm going for a draw in this one. And yeah, will there be fans? There should be fans of this one, right?
Yeah. I think there should be. I'm not too worried about Arsenal yet this season. I think they should just about have enough to stay up this season. Sorry,
Sorry,
no,
Manfred.
I stole that. I stole that from Roy Keane this weekend. It was brilliant. Him trying to deliver that line in a straight face was brilliant. No, Arsenal in a horrific run of form, and probably the team you don't want to play is Burnley, because you know Burnley are going to come. They're going to be in your face. They're going to be physical. They're going to be strong. So this is another really, really tough game for Arsenal.
And Burnley, they've only lost one game in four, and that was no disgrace. That was an injury hit Burnley against Man City. So you do think when you look at this game, surely Arsenal can't lose to Burnley. But I really do feel like Arteta's feeling the pressure. I don't know if you guys saw it, and I know Manfred talked about it last week about Thomas Partey. But the video of Partey coming off of the field as Tottenham attacked, and Arteta pushing him back onto the field to run back and just injuring Partey even more. It feels like it's not a good look for anyone at the Emirates at the moment, and there's something in the air there that just doesn't sit right, I don't think.
There's something in the air, and also just honestly, without wishing to be cruel, a manager who's probably a little bit out of his depth right now, right? It's one thing to be, to work with Guardiola and to be coaching a side who just does amazing things. Now they've got to find a way of getting out of, real bit of trouble. Joking aside, Roy Keane joking aside, they haven't scored. When was the last time they scored any goals? I think they've scored like 2 goals in God knows how many games. They pinged a load of crosses in, didn't they, in that game, especially when they were behind. And I understand it, right, because they couldn't find a way through the middle. So don't get me wrong, makes sense, right? But they had nothing on the end of it. Never looked like scoring. I think they're going to lose.
Good point, Kev. The manager out of his depth. The manager certainly not out of his depth is Sean Dyche. And after you spoke to him last week, Joe, he sounded pretty upbeat, about signing these superstars in January and also beating Man City. Burnley actually did well against Everton. I thought they were the better team. And, they were unlucky to concede that goal, like I said. I don't know if I will go as far to say that they will get the win at the Emirates, but I'll go for a draw.
Yeah, you'd have to say out of those bottom 4 or 5 teams of Fulham, West Brom, Sheffield United and Burnley, you'd say Burnley are the one team who you think can kind of pull themselves out of it.
I think something that we've not discussed is also the fact that Burnley have a potential England goalkeeper there, Nick Pope. And, even if Arsenal do pepper him with shots, he is still a high-quality goalkeeper. He is able to win points on his own.
Indeed. Final game of the weekend on Sunday night, 8:15, Leicester against Brighton. Leicester, of course, that late smash and grab, Jamie Vardy's goal, get the points for them and get them back really on, I think they're going a little run now. Brighton robbed by Southampton the other way. I can only see this going one way, and it's a Leicester win.
I think where you'd be concerned if you were a Brighton fan is, yes, they did play very well against Southampton, but they never really look like scoring that many goals. They do struggle to create a lot of chances, and they've got Danny Welbeck up there. He's never really been a 10, 15, 20 goal a season striker. So I just worry with Brighton where all their goals are going to come from.
Agreed. I think Leicester, as much as we say that they kind of was a bit of a smash and grab against Sheffield United, they still have some serious talent, and I do start to feel, like Kev mentioned, I do feel like results are starting to revert to type a bit, and I think we'll definitely see a Leicester win.
Brighton seems to have been unlucky against every team in the country apart from Liverpool, so I don't know what to tell you there. I think Leicester will win, and good luck to them.
Oh God, that about does it this week. Of course, we couldn't finish off an episode of the Irishman, Englishman, and Scotsman Football Podcast without one of Kev's majestical poems. Kev,
here we go. Bit of Shakespeare for you to kick things off, and sorry about the language. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Fuck off. It was freezing, the fans will all say. The ones who got back into some of the grounds, the Tier 2 elite in this endless lockdown. And oh, how they roared during matchday 11, supporting their heroes and unknowns like Creven, Kelleher, faultless in goal on the Mersey. If only they'd spelled his name right on his jersey. It was fabulous just to hear some real voices. The refs getting stick, the groans, the rejoices. Even Paul Pogba had an inspired day, though his agent insists he'll soon be on his way. This was a week when the strong were all flexing their muscles as all those results so perplexing from early this season, how much more restricted, and the league shaping up much more like what we predicted. Start with United, who, though much maligned, look formidable now after going behind. They were shite at West Ham, oops, pardon my French, until Bruno Fernandes was brought off the bench. The Portuguese wizard transformed the Red Devils, the second half like a fun night at the revels, as Pogba smashed home, then Greenwood and Rashford left Moyes looking shell-shocked, his best laid plans fractured. United are sixth with the game still in hand, a place above City, who likewise now stand handily placed with a free game, a burner, after pummelling Fulham through Sterling, De Bruyne, and up at the top, imperious Spurs, the lords of North London, the chargé d'affaires. Arsenal start poor and frankly remain so, as Tottenham fans bask in the Son Harry Kane show. Chelsea and Liverpool kept up the pace. Leeds take the lead, but then put in their place. 3-1 it finishes. Lampard ecstatic. Liverpool's win over Wolves more emphatic. But the best part at Anfield was not the clear win or Wijnaldum's finish, right foot mate, top bin. It wasn't Trent's comeback and not even Klopp back punching the air in front of the Kop. It was hearing the fans singing prior to the game. 2,000 voices, that famous refrain, a poignant reminder of what we've all known. With football, you never walk truly alone.
Brilliant stuff, Kev. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Joe, thank you.
Nice one, JP.
Cheers, Fino.
Cheers, guys.
Right, guys, this has been the Irishman, Englishman, and Scotsman Football Podcast. We will be back a day early next week. Our show will be out on Tuesday, so keep an eye out for that and enjoy the games. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to hear more of our podcasts, please click on the red subscribe button on the bottom right-hand side. Thank you.